Hello, hi.
What the hell is even that?
I'm not a talking sentient sandwich. Sorry to disappoint. I don't know if you noticed, but I stopped saying that I was the talking sentient sandwich quite a while ago, and this is why. But I'm kind of just testing this out, so it doesn't matter. Let's just get right into the video. Top 10 lists are so arbitrary. You can't even take my word for any of these, because no matter how much I've deliberated its exact order, I'm still gonna wake up tomorrow realizing I put one way too low on the list, or that I forgot to include something entirely. Yet how could I, a self-respecting YouTuber, not break down my favorite movies of the year, or at least what I've decided are my favorite today? Hopefully giving you some must-watch recommendations, but also just to round out the year so that we can look back and go, wow, aside from the terrible real-life stuff, it's been a good year. Welcome back to Sandwich Reviews. I'm That Sandwich Guy, your nihilistic optimist, and it's not quite over, but for the most part, 2025 has been one for the books. For superhero fans like me, dramatically changing the landscape of what a comic book blockbuster can look like, trading gritty, outdated themes for earnestness and the importance of saving lives. So with that in mind, let's just jump right into the list with number 10, The Thunderbolts, which blew me away. And it's not like I wasn't expecting anything from this. I made a handful of video essays to communicate just how much I was anticipating it, as I do with every comic book movie, yet The Thunderbolts did something I thought was impossible. It actually brought back Marvel for me, giving us characters that are now universally cared for, a villain we are all invested in, themes that could make even the most snobby of indie filmmakers and critics give it a second glance, and the first post-credit scene since The Marvels that has actually mattered. The action got a little rubbery, where CG doubles move in ways that are far from human, something that only gets worse with every rewatch. But surprisingly for an MCU joint, the action wasn't where it shined. And it may not have gotten the highest spot on this list, but with relatable characters and plenty of fun to be had, The Thunderbolts definitely deserves to be in my top 10. And you know what else deserves to be on my list? Number 9, Companion. Released way back at the start of 2025, I almost forgot about this one. But when I first started typing up what would eventually become this list, Companion was, of course, jotted down. And as I kept going, the memory of how entertaining this was came flooding back to me. Going in, I knew certain aspects of the story, not even from trailers, just from online chatter, but I won't spoil anything for you, because I happened to see this with my girlfriend, and due to her not knowing a single thing about it, she had a much better time with its twists and turns. It's not gonna ruin the experience if you know its premise, so if you got that spoiled, don't freak out. But the narrative's insane plot beats are undeniably more fun if you go in blind. So instead of anything specific, I'll just say that in the best ways possible, Companion reminded me of some other quintessential thrillers we've gotten lately, like Ready or Not and No One Will Save You, which feature believably kick-ass protagonists that intelligently problem-solve the impossible situations they're put in. You'll be shouting at the screen for the main character to do something so obvious it's insane that they hadn't thought of it, only for the narrative to pull a fast one and reveal that that one specific thing was already planned out and baked into the story. And the scriptwriter just succeeded in making you consider that one thing right when they wanted you to. And that happens over and over again. But switching gears a little, I want to move on to number 8, Predator: Badlands. And I thought about putting this way higher, but I think that was just recency bias talking. Don't get me wrong, it is good and deserves to be here on this list, but I also have plenty of problems with it, ones that I'm sure will only grow with time. And I thought about making a review for Badlands. From the loads of praise and critiques I walked away with, I was confident I would, but I was busy that week, so I'll sum up the thesis of that review I was concocting by talking about one small aspect of the movie. So for those who care, minor spoilers. I'll put up time codes and everything, but just know it's very minor. Ready? Alright, I think Deck's eel buddy, Shoulder Rocket, is indicative of the entire narrative. A little silly and far-fetched, requiring some leaps in logic to suspend disbelief, but because of how impeccably it's executed, 1000% works. How did that eel buddy know when and where to shoot his acid? Why did he take a bullet for Deck? It doesn't matter. It's cool. And that's Predator Badlands for you. Awesome enough to negate its inherent silliness. But switching back to a gear I just left, I want to talk about another scary movie. Number 7, Together. Which wasn't quite as scary as I was hoping for, because I went in thinking I was gonna get substance levels of body horror, but what has kept this movie in my mind for so long, making it my 7th favorite of the year, was its immediately identifiable subject matter. Maybe it's not universal, but I was so emotionally involved in the relationship between its two main characters, drawing some concerning similarities to my relationship, and getting certifiably anxious they weren't going to make it out happy. In that manner, it is scary, but just don't go in expecting a roller coaster of horror. Yet with engaging three-dimensional characters, intriguing plot lines, and convincing, visceral visual effects, everything comes together to make a memorable experience. I wish equal focus was given to both primary characters, where the protagonist is more Dave Franco and less Alison Brie, but the writer/director was a dude, and the classic rule is, write what you know. But another best case instance of a writing team sticking to what they know is number 6, The Naked Gun. A pick that you might be surprised is even on this list, yet once you consider how it set out to do one thing and one thing only, succeeding moment after moment, its placement begins to make sense, being so unbelievably fun and funny. It's light on themes. In fact, I'm not sure there's an ounce of screen time not devoted to setting up a joke, but for a spoof movie, it's picture perfect and I could not ask for more. I know it's not for everyone and a lot of you will hate it, but the mile-a-minute punchlines are non-stop and odds are one of them is gonna get a healthy chuckle out of you, such as a running gag about always having a cup of coffee. There was a couple times it didn't work as well, but just because it kept coming back to it, getting progressively more ridiculous every time, it also got progressively funnier to me. Until Liam Neeson is flying through the air, held up by an owl sent down from the heavens by his father, then gets another cup of coffee delivered to him. I just about died of laughter right then and there. But The Naked Gun isn't the funniest movie I've seen this year, which would have made for a great transition, but that prize spot does not go to the next one on the list. Just a little foreshadowing for you, because that brings us to number 5, Frankenstein, which was so stunningly gorgeous that for a second it made me forget it's technically a Netflix movie. All jokes aside though, that didn't really bother me too much, given I'd already crossed that maddening bridge with Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, plus my small town's flatlining theater was never gonna show it, so I was forced to wait for its wider Netflix release anyway, and I do like being able to watch new movies on the couch. I know, keep the theater experience alive. But I like what I like. Like, remember in 2021 when Warner Brothers put all of their movies on HBO the same day they came out? They lost so much money, but I got to watch Dune, Matrix Revolutions, and The Suicide Squad at home. And God, I loved it. And watching Frankenstein in the comfort of my own home felt like I was back in those lockdown times. But only in the good ways though. Just lucky enough to watch a new, breathtaking blockbuster at my own pace with a nice home-cooked meal right in front of me. All while being able to discuss this one filmmaking trick they employed or a plot thread adapted from its source material as it's happening. And being able to do that is why I've seen Frankenstein 4 times already. And you know what? Before long, I'll probably go back for more. And I'm aware I haven't really talked about the movie itself, more talking about the at-home viewing that has eclipsed every conversation around it, but what do you expect? It's Guillermo del Toro faithfully depicting Mary Shelley's original novel. Of course it's amazing. My only question is, when's Del Toro's Bride of Frankenstein? Minor spoilers, but the movie was long enough, I kinda thought they were gonna get into it, but they only laid breadcrumbs for what could possibly come later. And yet another wildly popular film that, despite its undeniable success, was still looked at in some circles as a failure, which doesn't make any sense until you know what I'm talking about. That being number 4, Sinners. And what is there even to say? I could talk about how its vampire lore was used masterfully as a metaphor for identity and appropriation, or how its discussion on music transcended the medium itself, and don't even get me started on the scene that visualized that. But I mean, how do you even talk about perfection? Within 5 minutes of this, I thought I'd found a flaw, where the movie starts with a cliche, beginning at its end, with a character revealing that they'd survived an unruly night, and the narrative eventually showing us how they got there. Not the whole freeze frame, you're probably wondering how I got here thing, but kinda. Yet, by the time the movie's wrapping up, you'll realize even that is used to its fullest extent. I do work with someone that I recommended Sinners to, and they came back to me the next day and asked why I told them to watch something that boring, but I just plain old don't trust their judgment anymore. So honestly, that was probably a blessing in disguise. Though that random coworker, who will remain nameless, did say they enjoyed this next one on the list, not absolving them of the sin of not liking Sinners, but making it so that I could at least look in their general direction without feeling sorry for them. This, of course, being number 3, The Long Walk. And I think this movie works so well simply because of how likable its characters are. I'm not exaggerating when I say that over the course of its lean runtime, I fell in love with all of them. And not just the main 2, I'm talking just about everyone on screen. In a 1917 kind of way, by being with them every step of the journey, I grew a deep, personal connection with them, to the point that for a couple of those more than just predictable but inevitable deaths, I was still emotionally wrecked, and I shouldn't have been. The audience for this goes in understanding that only one person is gonna make it out, maybe 2 if the ending goes really crazy. Point is, I shouldn't have cared that much. But damn, whether it be the acting, the writing, or just the top-notch atmosphere, I was a mess watching this. Yet if you haven't noticed, I've been trying to keep it nice and spoiler-free as I get further down on the list, just because I know there's someone out there who hasn't gotten around to watching one of these. So let's just move on to number 2, Superman, which I was genuinely going to put as number 1, but I thought better of it. After all, I know it's not perfect. I even have a whole video about fixing its one problem, and in that, I don't even address everything I disliked. Truthfully, I'm more hopeful that 2027's Man of Tomorrow is really going to be the definitive Superman movie to knock all of the others out of the park, with tighter themes and even more breathtaking action, especially with a now confirmed Brainiac. But I can't deny how David Cornsweet's Superman, purely because of Gunn's writing in this movie, is the definitive modern Superman. The one everyone thinks of when they picture the big blue Boy Scout. And soon enough, just down to how naive and likable this Clark Kent is, he'll be the first person to come to mind when thinking of a hero of any kind. And that's all I want Superman to be. So Superman wasn't just a success, cementing that Gunn's new DC world was here to stay, but it also got me excited to see the continued adventures of this universe for another couple decades. And I can't wait to see all of that. But before getting to my favorite movie of the year, spoiling what in the world could have possibly beaten Superman for me, let me give you some honorable mentions. First being Fantastic Four: First Steps. and people have done the classic Twitter flip and decided it's mediocre, but no one can take away from me how genuinely incredible it is. It's not quite as good as The Incredibles, the only good Fantastic Four movie before this, and that's kinda why First Steps didn't make it on the list, but it still deserves to be talked about. But we also got Avatar: Fire and Ash, which I thought about making a video for, taking out the third act and making its climactic ending about what happens in the second act, but none of that matters. And you want to know why? Early on, the main characters left one of these floating creatures to die without even trying to save it, and because of that, 0 out of 10. But we also got Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which is similar to Fire and Ash, where, plot aside, it's an event that needs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. And Bring Her Back, which wasn't as good as Talk to Me, the team's previous work, but it's in that same vein, because I'm still thinking about that one scene with a kid's mouth and a knife. But how could I also not mention Wake Up Dead Man? And I just talked about the Netflix experience with Frankenstein, so just copy and paste everything there to here. But also, each Knives Out movie is just great in its own right, and I can't wait for 20 more. And there's so many others I need to mention. K-pop Demon Hunters, One Battle After Another, Black Bag, Novocaine, Roofman, but only one can claim that top spot, which belongs to number 1, Weapons. A perfect mixture of fun, intriguing, and scary. I've heard complaints that its themes, if you can even say that it has any, are too scattershot, with a different idea being explored with every new character rather than one solid overall message. And I can't argue with that, but Weapons is still a great time. And it has 2 genuinely terrifying shots, with the rest of its runtime masterfully built around fleshing out the mystery and the characters, but it's also surprisingly hilarious. You know how I mentioned The Naked Gun wasn't the funniest movie of the year? Yeah, this was funnier. With a certain physical gag being done so many times near its ending, I was doubled over, practically dying of laughter. And then, for the actual ending to be even more hilarious, played out entirely for laughs. And the crazy thing is, it worked. Everyone in the theater was still fully engaged in the story. They were just given a cathartic, fun finale, one that didn't break any suspension of disbelief, simply because the movie had been training its audience's brain the entire time to accept that ludicrous of a situation. But rather than just droning on about how much I love Weapons and how much you need to see it, I'll just end the video here. But was there anything on this list that you think doesn't belong? Anything that should have been there but wasn't? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.